Hello again, my friends, and you are my friends, and welcome to Fighting Talk. It's Fury versus Wilder. The trilogy completes itself this weekend at the boxing match that wasn't going to happen. Then the legal teams got involved, and it is going to happen, and got in the way of a prized fight between Joshua and Fury. I'm joined by our boxing guru, the man, the myth, the legend, the media mogul, Matthew Phillips. Matt, it's a match we've seen a couple of times already, but it still feels like it's the first time all over again.
It's a funny one, this, isn't it? I think when they first put this fight together, it felt like it would just be like a one-off.
Yeah.
Versus Tyson Fury. And then, of course, it was a draw, very disputed draw. And then it went to a second fight. I don't think anyone expected to see a third fight after the second one, I have to say.
No. The legal teams got involved. It was all legal,
yeah, exactly.
in that contract.
Exactly. I mean, had Fury got the decision in the first one, which arguably he should have done,
It
was a bit weird that Phil Rogers, the British judge, the one we was all probably leading on to think it will give him the nod, actually scored it at the draw, which was 113 points apiece, which then set up the second fight. And I don't think anyone really expected the third to come along. And of course, Joshua and Fury was the one we all wanted to see. I'm kind of thinking that, this is like, you get given the world's greatest burger on a Monday. It was so good, you decide to have it again on the Tuesday. By the Wednesday, you don't want to see it again. And it's a little bit like this.
Do you really feel that?
Yeah, I think a lot of people in the boxing trade, they call it. I think it was such a one-sided beating that Wilder got that no one really wants to see third. Because normally you go to a third fight when you kind of won a piece.
Yes, absolutely.
Whereupon you'd be very hard pressed, I think, to give probably Wilder more than 2-3 rounds out of the 19 they've boxed.
I think he had one moment, really. I wouldn't even say rounds. I think he had one moment which has been dramatized and and broadcast around the world more times than anything else.
Yeah.
And maybe that's what swung the British judge at the time. But honestly, I don't know. As you say, I don't know how the first fight was even close, because Fury outboxed him from start to finish. It was just one-sided all the way.
It was funny about that, because Tyson was coming off like a 3-year layoff, and he had 2 kind of warm-up fights against, sort of what Reg Gutteridge used to call Mexican road sweepers, the old ITV radio TV commentator. If he was like just an opponent, he would call them Mexican road sweepers. They were certainly just warm-up fights, and then he goes straight into fight Wilder. And I think Tyson probably felt that, because they're such polar opposites, in that Tyson has been brought up to be a fighting man. I'm a fighting man, he keeps saying. And it's in the DNA of the Fury family, a travelling family. It goes back generations. Whereupon Dontay Wilder kind of turned to boxing out of desperation, really. He looked like he was going to be an NFL.
Was it really?
He looked like he'd become NFL wide receiver. Didn't get the grades to go to university. Then he had a daughter who had spina bifida, and he turned to boxing to help fund his family. So, which has turned out to be a great move, because he's made absolutely millions from it. But but he was someone who kind of turned to boxing from desperation, really, rather than he was actually, born with a pair of gloves on, which you always imagine Tyson Fury probably was, with his dad being Gypsy John, and the lineage that goes through their family.
John Fury is a absolute legend. He's a great celebrity. The whole family. I mean, apart from Tommy Fury, I'm not a big fan of him. But I didn't know that about Deontay Wilder. I wonder if obviously Wilder was British, we would have definitely known about that, and maybe people would view him differently. I think people view Deontay Wilder through with the perception of he's just a muscle. A bit like Joshua, I feel, and I think that's why people have such high hopes for the Joshua Fury fight, because Wilder is very much that Joshua type boxer, and if Fury can dispatch Wilder, because don't forget the first fight, nobody gave Tyson Fury any chance to get out of 4 rounds. They said he would box himself out of gas, and if he didn't box himself out of gas, he'd get knocked on his ass. Now he got knocked on his ass, but he got up, and obviously this week is fight week, as we know, and here we are discussing it, and they've ramped up the trash talking, and they've done quite a good job, to be fair to them, at selling, or I feel they have anyway, selling the fight. I don't know how you feel they've done about selling the fight, because the trash talking sells it for me. That's always the
people want to see that ahead of big fights in Vegas, certainly. I think Wilder's a funny one. I think if he was from this country, he'd be absolutely massive. Because of the knockout record, it's something like 41 wins,
He's a machine.
Yeah. I think if he was from the UK, he'd be absolutely huge. He's not actually a massive ticket seller in the States for whatever reason. And they're struggling to sell tickets on this one. I think there's still a lot of tickets available because the UK fans have not been able to travel. And of course, they travelled in vast numbers for when Ricky Hatton used to go over to Vegas, and they did for the last one when Fury won comfortably. Yeah. So I think they're still struggling. So they're gonna have to kind of sort of set themselves on the pay-per-view, and the pay-per-view buys in the States are ridiculous amounts of money. It can be like anything from about $99 through to $150. Whereupon you're paying like 25 quid here.
Yeah. See, I'd love to go. It's a dream weekend for me because the Bears are also in town playing. Playing. So it'd be a dream weekend for me. It'd be Fury and Wilder. Then it'd be the Bears. But obviously we've got this. I just want to share what Dontay Wilder has posted. You obviously have mentioned his knockout record. He tweeted this week saying, "This time you won't get up," and a picture of Tyson Fury in that famous pose after being knocked down. That was a moment we'll never forget.
That was an amazing moment. You can see Steve Bunt's ringside. He's literally face going, because everyone thought Fury was just minutes away from, winning the title and a fairy tale comeback story. And that's probably what swung it as the draw, was that knockdown. How he got up from that, I don't know. But I think
good refereeing, really good refereeing.
It was very good. Yeah. A lot. When you're basically unconscious for about 8 seconds and then get up after 2 seconds, I think a lot of people would have
carried him out, would have waved him off big time.
Yeah.
Have you seen the BT documentary around that with the actual referee, where he says, "I got him up, he looked me dead in the eyes, he spoke to me in a coherent sentence, so I got him to run up down the spot, and he did it in a straight line, and he was good to go." Whereas some referees, I feel, would have looked at him at the count of 7 and would have waved it off. And how many fights have we had where they've been waved off too early and you feel you've been robbed a little bit? This was great refereeing.
There's no doubt that Tyson Fury was knocked out. It was just that he came back round again. The only one I've seen similar to that was when Groves was decked Cole Froch in the first fight.
Yes.
And if you watch Froch go back, I thought he was unconscious. I thought it was going to be a first round stoppage. How he got up, I don't know. And it's the same thing with Tyson Fury. And arguably, you'd say Fury then probably went on, even though it's a 10-8 round, he actually probably outboxed Wilder for the rest of that round.
You had to, because he had to keep him at arm's length. Or he had to change the game plan and keep him away because he knew one more shot might finish him. What makes that moment even more special, though, is the uncharacteristically Dontay Wilder blow the kiss, shake the shoulders, and then he looks round, and then like Cruncher says, rose like the dead man. Like it's like WWE. Fury suddenly rises, and you just see Wilder's face just drain of the colour. He's like, shit, the bed.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, he can't believe it, can he?
It's like seeing Jesus. It's like Jesus. It's like rose from the dead. It's like Lazarus as I'm here.
Yeah, the Undertaker. Yeah, you're right, like WWE.
So will he do it?
That's got to be a thing, though, that goes through Wilder's mind, because he got outboxed by someone who'd not really had any world-class opposition in 3+ years.
Years off.
He then takes Wilder's best shots that have literally, sent people to hospital, and then gets up from that. And then he attempts to do the same tactics again in the second fight. Fury comes in much bigger, much more with his tools sharpened, absolutely dominant. Yeah, I would be struggling to think in probably the last 50 odd years of a more one-sided, a fight that from the champion. I mean, he literally was just all over the shop, Wilder, and that exposes really what Wilder brings to the table, in that he probably is just a big puncher, but is probably very below average in technicalities of boxing. Be it, he's got quite a good jab, he's got a huge reach because he's built like a basketball player, isn't he? 6'6", got absolutely huge reach, very skinny legs. I mean, he's the only world champion at heavyweight I can remember being floored by a body shot. I think back to about mid-80s when Mike Tyson beat what was a blown up light heavyweight Michael Spinks, who beat Larry Holmes to wreck Larry Holmes's dreams of beating Rocky Marciano's 49-0. Spinks beat him, got decked with a body shot, got back up and was probably knocked out in 91 seconds. That's the only time I can really think of a champion that was floored with a body shot. Very rarely would you see that. But again, that just illustrates the difference in sizes.
Absolutely. Is that why you feel Wilder doesn't sell as many tickets? Because they've had greats like Tyson and the American public don't view Wilder anywhere near the Tyson level of caliber?
I really don't know, to be honest with you. I mean, he's not. I mean, he's got a great record when you look at it. But when you actually go through BoxRec, which is the kind of the Bible of opponents that people have faced, there's again, to go back to Reg, there's a lot of Mexican road sweepers on there. I mean, people with like losing records.
Love that.
He had 2 good knockout wins against Ortiz. They were good because Luis Ortiz is kind of like Cuban, really good technical fighter. There's question marks over how old Ortiz was when he fought Wilder. A lot of people think he's probably 40 plus. He was winning both those fights until he got stopped. He beat Bermain Stavern for the title on points, weirdly, and then knocked Stavern out in a round. But I mean, he's from Haiti, Stavern. Not an elite heavyweight.
Not an elite, but no, you're absolutely right.
Dominic Brazil, that Joshua went 7 rounds with, he floored him in a round. That was a good win, I think. But Tyson is probably the first really elite heavyweight that he's fought. 6'9", can box orthodox. It would not even surprise me if Tyson comes out and boxes southpaw tomorrow night, just for something to do, to try and fight.
Just for some...
Yeah. He's like Ronnie O'Sullivan in that respect. He can box either. I remember he boxed
and box it well.
Yeah, he fought the Irish champion Martin Rogan southpaw just to prove he could, and stopped him in about 5 rounds.
I'll never forget the Klitschko fight when he goes over to Klitschko's own backyard. Literally, after saying weeks, I can beat you with 1 hand behind my back, sticks 1 hand behind his back, and just dares Klitschko to put the fight, put the punch in. I mean, the guy's confidence in his own ability is almost bordering arrogance at times.
It's probably boxing genius. I mean, a man of 6'9", 20 stone, moving like a lightweight. I mean, it's not too many. I mean, he dwarfs Muhammad Ali. I mean, we were talking on our football show the other week. I mean, even Usyk is bigger than Muhammad Ali. People don't realise. So it shows you just how big Tyson Fury is when he's in the ring at 6'9".
And he gets in here. He gets in here.
He's a good talker. But I think the big thing that's happened for him and why he was able to put that performance in the second fight, which was different from the first, was because in the first he had Ben Davidson, who's much more of a technical trainer, and had Billy Joe Saunders on his books as well, very technical fighter. So that's why they probably did that more of the stick and the move, sort of fighting out of an unorthodox stance in the first fight. And then in the second one, of course, he went to the Kronk gym, the famous Kronk Community Centre which was run by Manny Stewart, who was the trainer of Lennox and Vladimir Klitschko. And that was Manny sadly passed away a few years ago. And then that's now run by his nephew, Sugar Hill. And Sugar Hill basically looked at Tyson Fury and said, you need to start using that power and your height for knockouts, because that's what the Kronk gym's all about. Tommy Hitman Hearns was one of their famous guys. You might remember the Hagler fight, 3 rounds of absolute unbelievable explosion, because Hearns just went in there and tried to fight fire with fire and ends up getting floored by Hagler, who was like a ferocious puncher. And Tommy Hearns said, I'm from the Kronk gym, I'm going to fight fire with fire. And he went in there. It's one of the greatest fights you've ever seen. So Sugar Hill basically said, let's go in there, use our size. We're going to dwarf Wilder with our weight. Went in there, absolutely dominated him. And I think that'll be the tactics again tomorrow.
Well, this is it. And I'm on Tyson Fury's Twitter feed. I'm going to read you a few things that he's been saying this week. We've got, there's nothing that can beat me. The only thing that can beat me is me being stupid. They're not going to outgun me, outstrengthen me, or out-heart me.
Well, he does bring a lot of heart, Wilder. I have to give him credit. We're kind of like dumbing down his boxing skills a little bit, but he does bring an absolute will to win, which is kind of what, the other agenda that's on the back of this fight, of course, is conspiracy theories. So the first one, he couldn't really take the loss.
No.
And Tyson Fury said to the American media overnight, Tyson Fury said overnight that, when Joshua got beat actually by Usyk and Ruiz, you've never seen more sporting person. He was like, I congratulate them. They were too good for me. Wilder couldn't deal with it. First of all, his ring entrance suit was too much.
Yeah, way too heavy, too tired.
Then he decided he had a arm shoulder injury, which needed surgery. And I believe he did have surgery on that. But that might have been caused from the punches he got from Fury. Then he decided Mark Breland, who was a fantastic amateur and a very good welterweight champion, would stop the fight too early. Some people would argue stops you from getting brain damage.
Yes.
He got sacked. And then he's brought in Malik Scott. We'll come to him in just a second. And then there was the Walter was laced. The Fury had horseshoes in his gloves. Well, he called them egg weights. absolute nonsense. I mean, just ridiculous, which does make me think, and Tyson's mentioned this a few times, does make me think that, he's not accepted the defeat.
No, he's not mentally strong either. Obviously, you remember that outburst where he said, to this day, which became a famous meme, when he was interviewed and he was asked who's I'm to this day. You can get in. Here's why Tyson maybe is the kryptonite to Wilder, because you can get in Wilder's head. It's quite easy to do. But as Cruncher says, which is quite right, Wilder's dangerous because he has nowhere to go if he loses this time. This is win or gets yourself to the back of the queue type stuff.
Yeah, exactly. He would have been, he wouldn't have won his last 3 fights in that case. But he's brought in Malik Scott to replace Breland, which is a weird move because actually Wilder knocked out Malik Scott in less than 2 minutes. He's one of the bums on his record, right?
But he didn't sack Jay
Diaz,
who obviously watched him take the gloves.
Exactly. And Tyson Fury mentioned that Diaz has been with him since day one. We talk about Wilder turning to boxing because he had a daughter to look after. He also did about 4 jobs. He was a kitchen hand in it was called the Red Lobster restaurant. He was a truck driver for Budweiser, and he's been with Diaz since day one. So obviously feels a bit more loyalty to Diaz. But
we need HGV drivers. I mean, if he doesn't win, he's got a HGV license. It sounds like you can quite easily find new employment. Absolutely.
There's a job going with BP, I think.
A couple of questions we've got coming in, though, Matt. We've got Ben Moore. Adaptability. Fury won't be affected by the lack of crowd he's fought outside the UK before. Fury decides he wins simple because Robert Grimsey asks you, will the lack of British fans affect Fury, do you think?
No, I don't think so. Tyson might even rise to that a little bit more. Like Ben just said there, he's fought in the Madison Square Garden Theatre, which is the smaller venue, just next door to the actual main one. And he's fought Steve Cunningham there. He actually got floored. Who's a cruiserweight. He actually got floored by Steve Cunningham there. It's just something to take into account. When Tyson is unfocused and takes his eye off the ball, he can be floored. It's happened before.
And hit himself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, one of his first fights. And so that's something to bear in mind. But he went over to Germany and fought Klitschko, and he's fought in Vegas. I don't think he'll be too bothered by that.
I actually think though he's more American than Wilder because Americans love the charisma, the over-the-top brashness. Fury is a WWE sort of style boxer
because
yeah, exactly. He gets on the mic and he lays the smackdown, as The Rock would say, and the Americans eat that up. And I think if you look on Twitter, there's many people saying I'm Team Fury this week. Love Fury, great guy, great character, and the comeback. All for Wilder's story that you've been talking about. Fury's comeback story is something that I don't think we'll ever see ever again. The guy won the belt, had some mental health issues, which he's documented himself. Left the sport at his age, got out of shape, got himself back into shape, and then came back and won the heavyweight championship of the world, which is what made the first fight a bit bitter because it should have been the climax of the fantastic comeback, and it wasn't. The second fight was. So how does Wilder get himself this belt back? Because this is his last chance to lose. How does he do it?
Yeah, there's a lot of unanswered questions here. So that's the reason why he's got Malik Scott in, because Malik Scott's not going to teach him how to throw punches with any more ferocity than he does already, because he does that already. What he's brought him in for is the technicalities of the game. Scott had a record of about 40 fights, of which he only ever lost 3. He was about 35-0 for a while, and his first loss was to Chisora. But he was a very conservative fighter. He was never really boxing for titles. He was almost like one of these gatekeeper fighters. You go through him, that's an entry into maybe the top 10 or something.
He's a Burnley.
Yeah. Like I say, he got beaten by Chisora. He got beaten by Wilder himself in less than 2 minutes. So I do feel like he's probably going to try and shore up his defensive game a little bit, get that jab going. His jab stats are quite good, but he just doesn't use it to set up anything. But where they probably will try and use him a little bit is trying to box on the back foot, and that's what Wilder couldn't do because Fury exposed him with his size, his punches. So, I mean, that's where Wilder's going to try and win it within about the first 3 rounds. If it goes any more than that,
He's got to.
Yeah.
I was going to say that.
All his fights have ended pretty much inside 3 rounds when he's won them. He's going to have to try and do the same thing here again. But can he deal with the size? Can he deal with the speed of Tyson Fury? I mean, Wilder is a fast puncher himself, but he's going to have to get off the front foot very quickly, Wilder. Otherwise, it's going to be exactly what you saw in the second fight, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I was going to say the exact same thing. I think from Wilder's point of view, he is working to a 4-round fight. He has to view it. This is no more than 4 rounds, because if it goes more than 4 rounds, this isn't going to go well for me. I honestly think that, because Fury will just start to take control and outbox him and keep him where he needs to keep him. Wilder needs to fly him, and he has to aim for the knockout.
That's his only chance. And he is 30. He's 36 in a couple of weeks.
Yep.
He's almost exactly the same age as when Tyson fought Lennox Lewis. And Tyson Fury, Mike Tyson ended up on his back within 8 rounds and was a shadow of his former self. That could happen here as well. He was 34, 35 when he got that absolute beating off Fury. Now he's come back 20 months later, almost 2 years later. And, it's, heavyweight boxing is a hard game. You take a big beating like that. I mean, I used to think Mike Tyson was the best, and he got
no Lewis. He was no Lennox Lewis.
He was battered by Lennox.
Lennox Lewis was the best of all time. Outside of Ali, he was the best.
And talking about him, when he got to the same age as what Wilder is at now, he only went 3-3.
Yeah, it's a tough age. You reach a certain age, and as it's your prime. You go past it. You become
big
more.
Shots.
Yeah, absolutely. Your chin becomes a bit more glass, like Amir Khan, bless him. That is a definition of a glass jaw. For Fury, you got to keep him close, which sounds almost counterintuitive, but you can't let him wind up. You got to keep him close, body shots, keep the pace low in the first 4. Keep it so he can't come in, wind up, and land, because he needs to wind himself up to land that killer. He ain't gonna land a killer with a close jab, I don't feel, or a close uppercut. It's gonna be
Wilder might try and use his jab in order to try and land that right hand, but he's a big. But I mean, Fury's seen it all before. They've done 2 fights already. They've done they've done 19 rounds. He's seen it all before. It's whether or not Malik Scott's been able to make an impact on Wilder. I think it's going to be unlikely. So it's whether or not it's down to what Tyson does at the end of the day, I think. And I think they'll use the only question mark with Tyson is, of course, his daughter was not being well. His newborn daughter wasn't well.
No, COVID, wasn't it?
I think she was born with a complication.
Oh, really? Okay, right. Yeah.
She was okay. Thankfully, she was okay. But for about a couple of weeks, it was touch and go for her. Athena Fury, they've called her. So thankfully, she's now okay. But that stopped Tyson from training for a bit, I think. And I don't think he's had such a long camp as what he'd wanted to have done. I think they've probably only done 5 to 6 weeks, and normally you'd be looking at probably 8 to 10 weeks. That said, of course, we've had this fight's been stop and start. It's supposed to have been in July 2020, and then later that year, and then it was supposed to be July this year. And Tyson's one of these people who's always training anyway, but he's always ticking over because he says he needs that for his mental health. But he did say that he only needed 3 weeks of sparring to be ready for Wilder. That's just his mindset. So we'll see whether or not. What weight he comes in at, I don't know. Steve Bunt's interviewed him this week, said he looked really lean. I do think, had he had a longer camp, he might have tried to come in around, whether he was joking on it, he said, I wanted to come in at 300 pounds, which is 21 stone.
Yeah.
Now, what Wilder's going to come in, I don't know. You come in at the first fight around about 15.5, which is only a stone above cruiserweight max. Yep. And then second fight, he come in at 16.5. But that didn't really serve him any purpose either. So it's difficult to know. I think probably the heavier that Tyson Fury comes in, the better for him. Because he can use that weight to lean on him like he did on the right.
Keep him, lean on him, and then you drain his energy while leaning on him.
Blueprint there. He's done it once already. There's an absolute blueprint there. It's whether or not Wilder feels confident enough to be able to use the new defensive or jabbing skills that Malik Scott brings to the table in order to set up his own shots. Because if he misses with his own shot, he's going to catch one. And he went down twice in the second fight.
That's the thing. He may have changed and brought new techniques on board, but can he master the techniques when the bullets start firing for real?
It's difficult, like you say, when we've said it before on the football show. Everyone's got a plan until they get punched in the face. And then...
Look at Joshua. I think he came into his fight with too many different things going on his head, and his style was 1 minute was a certain way, then the other next minute was another certain way. He just never got a rhythm. And boxing's a rhythm. You get into a rhythm, you get into a pattern. It's all in muscle memory.
Yeah, he didn't really, and Joshua didn't really use the attributes that he's got.
No,
which is, again, like Wilder, he brings some power to the table against a smaller man. I mean, people always say a good man will beat a good smaller man. But unfortunately, Joshua, as the big good man, was fighting a great small man.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you know what I mean? Whereupon I think here, Fury's probably only fighting someone with elite power, but quite probably very below average skills in other areas. He should be able to deal with him comfortably in the third. He's seen it all before. He should.
He should. You can go too far if you're Deontay Wilder, and you can get away from what makes you. because you're trying to fight what you think you need to fight. So you could come in more technical. And he might surprise us, come in thinking he can box and show the world he's got these new technical power S's and get away a little bit from what he is. He mustn't forget, Dontay Wilder, I am the bronze bomber. Like David Haye. Because when David Haye got away from what he was in giving haymakers and going for the power and going for the knockout, you saw what happened to David Haye. Dontay Wilder can't get away from that. He needs to come in and realizing I am a heavyweight knockout specialist, not a boxer like Tyson Fury. Let him do what he does. This is how I do it. This is how I win. If he comes in thinking he's going to box Tyson Fury, then don't even step foot in the ring because he ain't going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird that Teddy Atlas, who was one of Mike Tyson's coaches, well-respected coach in the States, who does his own podcast called The Fight. It's very good. He's picked Wilder for all 3 fights, which I find unbelievable. He picked him for the first one. I can understand that. Then he picked him for the second one. Okay, you might have thought he was unlucky in the first one. That's what he was thinking. And then, for whatever reason, he's picked him in the third one. And he's kind of likened him to like George Foreman getting beaten by Muhammad Ali, the bully getting bullied, and then coming back and winning the title. But the only flaw in that argument, of course, is that Foreman had 10 years off.
Yes, yes, he
came
did.
Back as like a different kind of, almost like a preacher man. He came back as a Christian, and he came back as a kind of reformed character in the world.
Wasn't the bully.
Everyone hated him when he fought Ali. So I'm not really getting that argument. I'm not really getting that. And he come back at 45 as well. So, I mean, I say that people are starting declining in their late 30s. You know, George is kind of an exception to that, albeit had 10 years off. But I do feel like if Mike Tyson was a shadow of himself, Muhammad Ali was a shadow of himself, David Haye a shadow of himself in that late 30s, I think Wilder could be a shadow of himself, especially after the beat he got in the second fight.
But as you said to me the other day, it is Fury's first defense. Obviously, when he previously won it, he was stripped.
Yeah.
Is that going to weigh a little bit heavy on him? Is that going to play into the mind? Is that going to play defensively? Is he going to go for the points? How is he going to play it now?
I don't think that'll weigh into him. I think Tyson Fury's a strange character in that he's not really down with legacy or money or anything, really. I don't even think he just wanted to win the WBC belt. That was the only belt I didn't have. Now he's done it now. So it's just another fight for him now. I don't think he's like one of these guys, well, I'm going to put some defenses together and all that kind of thing. He just wants the challenge of a fight. Now, if I was going to put some money on, which I probably will, I think I'd go with, I don't know what the odds are on these, but I would say Wilder across 1 to 3. That's the only chance he's going to have, I think.
Yep.
Where I think maybe you could, if he was going to lay down some money, 20 quid or whatever, 4 to 6 for Fury, I think. I think he gets it done quicker this time. I think he'll just be a little bit sceptical of what and cautious of what Wilder brings to the table with Malik Scott in the corner. The big shot is always a danger. But I think once he gets through maybe 3 rounds of him, he'll think, I've got this in the bag. And he'll probably step on it. And he'll probably stop him between 4 and 6. That's my bet there.
4 and 6?
Between 4 and 6, I think it's good, yeah.
Wow, you're going a bit earlier than I am then.
Yeah.
Wow. 4 to 6. You think once Wilder gets out of those first 4 rounds, he's in. I would have said your money's in the 7th.
Same round as last time. I wouldn't disagree with that. I just think I think Fury's camp, Sugar Hill, you know, again, the Kronk Gym, they've seen it all before. Fury's seen it all before. They'll know when to step on the gas and probably get him out of there pretty quick between 4 and 6, I would say. What
comes next? Because some people have said in the chat, Dylan White is the person that sits and waits, which makes me laugh because Dylan White is no. He's what Fury calls Joshua, in my opinion. He's not a heavyweight boxer. He's not a top caliber heavyweight boxer.
He's a funny one, Dillian, isn't he? I mean, he loves a fight as well. That's why he took.
He loves it. Yeah,
he got floored by Povetkin, and he come back on one again. Povetkin, 40 years old. Yeah, someone past his prime, really. So it's a bit of a worry for White that he got floored, albeit with a great uppercut. But boxing owes Dillian White, the WBC, which is the belt that Tyson holds, owes Dillian White big time because he was like #1 contender for mandatory to Wilder for about 1,000 days, and never got the fight. So I think the WBC this week have ordered whoever wins has to fight Dillian. And of course, Tyson Fury said that, well, you know, once I've got Wilder out there and I've got no damage, I could probably fight him in December. That ain't going to happen, everybody.
No, but he could though, because I don't rate. I used to be really high on Dillian, and then Joshua fought him, and Dillian had the opportunity to kill him off in the boxing terms.
Yes,
he had him rocked,
and
he just lacked that instinct.
Yeah, he did.
And I've,
Yeah.
I've soured since then because
Yeah.
a top boxer has the instinct. You don't need to be trained for the instinct to see a boxer on his knees to go and finish him.
No, exactly. Well, Dillian has a hard fight himself coming up on pay-per-view. I think it's pay-per-view, or maybe it'll be on DAZN. I can't remember. But against Otto Wallin. Yeah, against Otto Wallin, who arguably beat Fury. We talk about Fury being the home fighter in Vegas. He had to have he landed a shot which cut Fury, which needed 42 stitches. 42 stitches in it. Had that been in the UK, boxing politics at work here, that fight would have been stopped. I've seen less stopped in the UFC cage, in the octagon, for less than that. But because of the money on the table and all that kind of thing, and the Fury, the Wilder rematch, and all that kind of thing, it carried on. Really, Otto Wallin, probably that fight should have been stopped. And, you know, so Wallin has a chance to get back in the picture against Wyatt. So we'll wait and see how that goes.
As we finish up, there's two more questions from the table. The first one is how does Joshua get himself back into the picture? Because that was the match we all thought we were getting. That's the dream match for a lot of casual boxing fans. The two Brits going after all the belts. Joshua with the physique and the heavy power. Fury with the boxing prowess. And it's that long age question. Who's the best boxer in Britain? Is it Fury? Is it Joshua? You've got two camps. How do we get to that fight?
Well, I mean, first of all, Joshua wants. Well, I'm quite pleased we didn't see. I'm a big Usyk fan, so I was pleased that he went on and won the belt. I didn't really want to see. I get that. Fury. I don't think anyone wants to see Fury Joshua in Saudi Arabia. That's when we Stadium fight all day long, isn't it? It's only went there because of the money and the lockdown. Just all that kind of thing. How does he get back in the frame? Well, he wants to fight Usyk again, right? So there's a rematch clause there. I don't like all these rematch clauses because it blocks everything up. So he wants to take that again. But Bob Arum this week floated an idea that whoever wins between Wilder and Fury tomorrow night then fights Usyk for all the belts. Joshua step aside money. It's not bad. Sometimes you can get it, probably 20 mil. And then he fights the winner. But boxing can be a waiting game. It's moving parts constantly. You could just sit back and chill for a bit, and then so-and-so beats so-and-so, and then you're back in the picture again, I think regardless, even if there was a belt at stake, you would see Fury versus Joshua because it's too many people want to make too much money. And that's the key to the game. Too many people have got a finger in the pie and will have a nice little pound note off the back of it. So I think you'll still see it. It could be like a Mayweather Pacquiao potentially, maybe past their primes a little bit. But I think you'll probably end up seeing it at some point. That's for certain.
I think we're 3 fights away, in all honesty, which makes it about possibly 3 years away. I think Joshua needs a comeback fight to restore some reputation. Fury needs to beat Wilder. Then he needs to beat Dillian Whyte. Then Fury set up. Fury's fine. If he can do those two things, which I've got no problem with, I think he will. He's set up. It's Joshua now that needs to, for me, regain his reputation as a top boxer, somebody who can mix it with other styles. Because now we've seen Usyk, we're kind of thinking, well, Fury, who people feel is better than Usyk, that's a conversation in its own right.
Yes,
would just obliterate Joshua. It's now almost it's not as good as it was. So he needs to rebuild himself in 2 fights. So I think we're 2 or 3 fights away personally. But
I disagree with that.
You know, that's another thing. And then we've got age coming into play, injury. You know, who knows if we ever see it, as you say, in their prime. Last question then.
And don't forget, you've got 2 other Brits bubbling just under in Daniel Dubois and Joe Joyce. They'll be wanting shots.
We're always well stocked for Brits that are good heavyweights. You know, it's and to be fair, Dillian Whyte, I'm not a big fan of him, but he has restored himself since the Joshua fight early in his career. And I think maybe he took that too early. I think he needed a couple more fights under his belt, probably a bit more seasoning, and who knows what would have happened. Who knows if Joshua would have been rocked and dropped. There
was beef there because they'd fought as amateurs, which is kind of what accelerated it a little bit. You'd probably end up seeing that fight again. There'll be lots of good fights floating around, but we'll just have to see what happens when all the pieces land after Saturday. Then we'll start getting an idea of what the picture looks like. I think.
Exactly. Well, that's the last question. How will the pieces fall on Saturday? Who is going to win this fight, Matthew Phillips, as we close up the show?
Yeah, so like I say, I think I'm pretty certain you're going to see a very similar fight to the second one. It's, as Crunchy said on the chat earlier now, I think it's last chance saloon a little bit for Wilder. So he could just come in swinging. which is him reverting to type. Despite having Malik Scott, a defensive coach, he could just come in swinging. You could see Fury go down potentially in one of those first 3 rounds. We know he can take the punches, but like I say, I think he'll step on the gas, and I think it'll be anywhere between the 4th and the 6th. You can get a bet on that as on one of the spreads, rounds 4 to 6. I'd lump onto that between 4 and 6 as a stoppage for Tyson Fury. Yeah.
I'd go 7 or 8 for Fury to stoppages. That's me personally. I think those two are the money rounds, particularly late in the 7th. But we'll see. We'll see. Join us later on tonight, 8:30. If you're watching this on a Friday for the press conference reaction show. If not, good luck to both fighters. And hopefully Fury, as the Brit, will win. But until next time, leave a comment. If you like the video, leave a like, leave a comment. Let us know your feedback. But that's Matt Phillips. I'm the Governor. And we'll catch you all